So dropper post from PNW Components that we're going to review. 2x9 drivetrain, and we switched it over to a 1x12 with the Eagle NX cassette. We got a wolf tooth elliptical front chainring. Now we're going to upgrade to a PNW dropper post. We ended up going with the PNW primarily because it was a American-made brand. They had a 3-year warranty. It is external routing because this bike isn't equipped with internal routing. And this kind of was the best budget option. It was like about 120 bucks. So we're going to be installing that next, and we're going to kind of go through all the steps. It's a fairly simple process. A lot of people can do it at home, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to start off by fitting the seat, and we're going to loosen the seat clamps that way to fit the new seat. You don't have to remove it completely. You just want it kind of loose, and then you can kind of get it to slide in place. And then once you get it slid in place and kind of in position, then we're going to sit there and install it, level it out. Now we're going to install a seat post. It goes on there. It's a little tricky at times, but if you kind of work it in there kind of sideways, it'll kind of slip in and you can get it in there.
I don't know how you did it.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, this is our dog, Luke. He is the inspector. He seems to be sitting there wanting to supervise whatever we're doing. So the seat post, it's easier if you don't take the clamp off, kind of, because if you take the clamp off, then you're trying to get the bolts back on, and it's kind of a mess. So what I find that it's easier to do is, it's kind of hard doing it in front of the camera, but if you separate the clamps, kind of like that. You got to kind of wiggle it a little bit, but then you get them separated. It creates a little bit of space. Then you're gonna slide the seat from the back kind of sideways. You'll get one of the clamps on, then you'll get the other clamp on, then it's on. Now all we have to do is tighten the bolts. And if you've had the seat on another post before, you can kind of see the marks of where your old one was, so you can kind of align it. So if you like that seat position before, it'll help you keep that position. So the only thing you'll do from here is you'll get a rough eyeball estimate of kind of how it's going to sit level, and then we're going to clamp the bolts down a little bit just to make it a little snug, and we'll get it on the bike, and then we'll kind of use the phone to level it out so you get a nice level seat. Okay, so once you got the seat kind of snug, it's not completely tight, but it'll be good enough for right now so that we can put it on the bike and level it and all that. So now we're gonna put it on the bike, and then we're gonna install the cable. And okay, so now that we got the seat post a little greased up, we're gonna go ahead and install it back onto the bike, and then kind of just get a rough idea of where we're gonna put it compared to before, and start running the cables. And so that'll be kind of roughly where it's going to sit. So now we're going to sit there and pop off the little cap that goes on it. We're going to run the cable and the housing, and then get it all going. Install the dropper post lever. We went with another PNW product. This is the PNW Puget. It's the side lever for the 1x systems. Since we upgraded to the 1x12, this will work a lot better than the kind of the horizontal dropper post lever that some other ones sell with the 2x system. So this one, it has torque readings that are on the top. You don't want it really tight, because in the event of a crash, you'd rather that thing kind of move out of the way rather than snap off. So right now it's just kind of loosely fitted, so he's gonna tighten the bolt at the bottom to kind of get it where he wants it. Although I think he might have to move it up a little bit because it's like way under the handlebars. So we're just gonna tighten it. And on the side, it gives you the torque specifications. It says like 2 Newton meters for the clamp, I believe, and then 4 for the actual handle. What we're doing now is we're kind of adjusting the position of kind of where we think we want it. That way, while you're riding your bike and you have your handlebars on the bike, it'll be a good kind of position for your thumb. That way your hand's not too far out.
Oh yeah.
So now it's on, and once we have the cable tension, it'll be kind of up here in this position. So it should put your thumb in a really good position to be able to flick it as you go. All right, so the next part we're gonna do is we're gonna install the cable and the housing. We're gonna start off by working with the cable or the housing. We're gonna attach the housing end links to it. We're not gonna attach one end of it yet because we're still gonna have to trim. So we're just gonna attach the end that's gonna go to the dropper because we know that's not gonna get cut. We're gonna start from here, work our way forward, and all the excess we're gonna trim at the front. So we're gonna start with the front or with the back and install that part, run the cable through it, and we're gonna kind of show you how it goes. And again, excuse this mess of a garage that we have. We have a plethora of projects that we're kind of working on. So we're gonna start off by removing this little end cap that just got shut off. Probably could have done that a little gently. So once the end cap is off, now we're gonna sit there and get the cable, run it through. Okay, so right now we're gonna slip the cable through the housing and we're just gonna feed it all the way through, because then the other end of it has a kind of a nut on it, which is gonna lock in place into the seat post. So we're gonna leave it with a little bit of room. That way we can fit it where it needs to fit. So there's a little groove in here where it's gonna sit, and that's gonna be kind of what actuates the dropper post mechanism. So once we get that in there, we're just gonna leave the cap off for now, and then we're gonna route the cable. We're gonna route the cable housing all along the bottom side of the bike and then up to the handle. Okay, once we have the cable here, we're gonna kind of run it underneath on the right side, and it's gonna come back around. It seems like it would probably flow better going this way. That way there's not a huge kink, because I think from going from here and then straight over here, it can create more of a kink. So we're gonna try to run it the other way. And right now we're just gonna kind of zip tie roughly in place, a little loosely, that way we can kind of adjust as necessary. So we're just gonna kind of get it a general place of where it's gonna sit. That way we can still adjust, and then we'll know exactly how much to trim off. So we got that in place. So now I'm just gonna run the cables around the headset, and then we're gonna get a rough idea of where it's gonna be. A good idea is to twist your handlebars. That way you get an idea of, if you do crash out, how much cable slack you need. So I'm gonna start with maybe about here. I'm just gonna kind of hold it so I know kind of where we're at. And it goes the other way. So I think right around here should be enough cable slack. So now we're gonna grab the trim tools, and then we're gonna start trimming and adjusting.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we got our cable cutters, and I've kind of figured out kind of where I want the cable. So we're just gonna cut through the cable right here. And you can just do it pretty quick and you should get a pretty smooth, even cut. And then we can kind of attach it here. We're gonna get our little end cap for the cable housing and then fit that in there. And then we can run the cable through and go from there. All right, so now we're gonna get our little Jaguar end cap. We're gonna just slip it over. It'll fit on there pretty snug. And then that'll help you adjust tension later on as you need it. And that'll just kind of slip in there. So now we'll run the cable back through from the back end of the cable housing and feed it all the way to the front. And we'll trim our cable and we'll adjust the tension and we'll test it out. So now I'm just gonna slip it back through and it should feed through pretty easily. And then you'll kind of see it come through at the front. Okay, so once you have the cable ran through the dropper post lever, it has a little guide built into the lever that helps guide it, but it also uses this little locking nut. This nut is kind of what clamps onto the cable and helps guide it through the movement. The trick with this one is that you may not see is that on the top there's actually a little locking nut. They have a really small Allen head to go in. If you don't have this, trying to fit that cable is just not going to work. Trust me, I've just spent the last 5-10 minutes trying to get it through and it didn't work. And it was just because of that little nut. So we're going to put this through the bottom and you're going to be able to align the little hole, which will pop open right here. And then we're going to run the cable through the hole. As long as it doesn't pop back out at you like that. So once you get through, it'll kind of pull through like that. So once you have that locking nut in, the cable kind of be where it needs to be. And now we're gonna move over to the back of the dropper post. I'm gonna get that back in place so that I know kind of where the cable housing is gonna be. So with that back in place, then we can come back up to the dropper post lever. We can kind of pull a little snugly on this. You don't want to pull too hard because then you're going to pull tension on the top. All right, so we got the cable tightened on here. This is just the extra that we're going to cut off. But you can see it kind of has tension. You can see on the seat post part that it's actuating and dropping all the way down. And then we'll kind of show, once you have the cable pulled, you can push the seat down and it goes down and it just pops right back up. And that's kind of where you want it to be. So that's essentially a little bit of work. Okay, so now we're just gonna, now that we got the dropper working, we got it kind of where we want it. Now we're just gonna cut off the excess cable. This is all gonna be kind of up to you and how much you wanna leave. We're gonna leave probably about that much, maybe about an inch or so. That way it still leaves you room for adjustment if later on as the cable stretches, we can kind of pull it out or kind of still play with it. If you cut it too short, then it's gonna be hard to kind of put your little crimp on it. So about an inch or so should leave you plenty of room to adjust and put your caps on. So we're just gonna do the wire cutter again. Just really quickly snap it. Then the wire cutter also has like a little crimping part at the bottom. So we're just gonna put the little crimping piece onto the back. Give it a gentle little pinch, and then we're gonna feed the cable into it. And then we'll clamp the cable. Once you clamp it, then it's on there pretty snug and you're good to go.